good people of YouTube, Mountbatten here, and today we are once again talking about everybody's favorite floating runways, CVs. So this is kind of an update to how I feel about CVs, especially with things like the Commander rework on the horizon, and after playing a fair bit of ranked. I missed the first go round of the new ranked season just because of everything that was going on in my life. I played a little bit of the last round, and since this round just started again, I'm back in bronze. Never really got out of bronze. Last time I only played, I think, like 4 ranked matches. But anyway, back in bronze now. I've been slugging it out there, and of course CVs are involved every step of the way this go round of ranked, and I'm guessing it's probably going to be like this for the near future, and I guess for this foreseeable future as well too, as Wargaming has stated they want CVs to be involved in every aspect of the game, from competitive to randoms to everything according to them. And well, after playing ranked for some time and then also trying to broaden my own horizons by playing more of a variety of ship classes, DDs, and CVs now, I've just kind of summarized my thoughts with this little talking point list I have created here. And some of it I've said before. There's also a fair bit of new stuff after, of course, playing more CVs than I had before. So, me and CVs, what is our history like? Well, I never really touched the class back in the day before the rework because it was very much more of an RTS top-down, just like ultimate micromanagement simulator. A lot of you newer guys that haven't seen CVs from before, go check that out, because whew, that feels like it's been forever ago. That feels like a completely different game for CVs, honestly, because well, it pretty much is. And it was, wow, it was something back then. CVs were extremely rare, probably just as rare as World of Warplanes players are today. You would occasionally run across them every shoot. If you played 10 matches, you'd be lucky if you ran into one every, legitimately every 10 matches. But the thing was, back then, those CV players were literally God. They could just annihilate anybody in one run. Like, I'm not talking about a couple of good runs. I'm legitimately talking about one run. They could remove a ship from the match. They were that good. They could carry entire matches by themselves. The mechanics were different back then. They didn't have unlimited planes, but good God, they were, well, like I said, God back then. And they weren't really played that much. It was a dying class for sure, but it's kind of like how Khabarovsk, well, at least how I perceived Khabarovsk for a while into the recent buffs. You know, you barely saw a Khabarovsk player, but then when he showed up, you knew you were dead, because if he's still playing Khabarovsk in the state that Khabarovsk was in, oh my God, he's got to be amazing in it. And that's how CVs were back in the day. But now that has most certainly changed. The rework, whether you liked it or not, has definitely saved the CV class from extinction. I'm sure many of you would rather have seen it go extinct, but it has not. And one of the main goals of the CV rework was to increase the amount of people playing CVs, and it has definitely done that. The other point of the rework was that it was supposed to close the skill gap between good CV players and bad CV players. And I can tell you it has done the exact opposite of that. The skill gap now is absolutely massive between a bad CV player and a good CV player. A good CV player is something to see. And with this skill gap has come a huge perception gap, which makes it extremely difficult to talk about CVs, really. By this I mean, on one end of the spectrum, you have mediocre players or bad players that lose their entire squadrons to random bursts of flak, that can't really drop correctly, and they don't really know how to conserve planes, how to spot, how to be useful, how to strike destroyers with whatever armament they're using, how to go after the correct class with the correct armament. Like, for example, they may be trying to go after destroyers with rocket planes on German CVs. They may be trying to go after destroyers with torpedoes on, like, Midway, which could work, but again, why do that when you have the HE rocket planes and this, that, and the other? Then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got Johnny Super Unicom, that his planes never get touched by a flat cloud. The only damage he ever takes is from the constant damage coming in from whatever ship he's attacking. He barely flubs a drop. He knows exactly when and where to drop his ordnance, what type to use, what to do, how to spot for his team, how to make sure something stays spotted that needs to die, so forth and so on. So you've got the guys at the bottom end of the spectrum that see that everything is just, of course, stacked against them. And of course, this isn't a thing that's limited to just the CV class. Every class has those players that just don't understand the full game mechanics yet, or they just aren't up to a decent skill level yet. They're still learning. Like battleship players that sail in perfectly straight lines and then are amazed when they get torpedoed out of nowhere by the DD that's been shadowing them for the past 5 minutes. Or cruiser players that are bewildered when they get nuked by a battleship, but yet they've been sailing broadside onto them for the past 2 or 3 minutes. Or the destroyer player that is surprised that the Moskva with a 12-kilometer radar is radaring him from 9 kilometers away. You get what I'm saying? Just players that haven't fully learned the game just yet and still have a ways to go. The thing is, with CVs, it's a much harder learning curve, because even myself, being a pretty experienced player, it's just such a change from the rest of the classes. Like, every class is, you're in a boat shooting guns. CV, now you're playing World of Warplanes. So, yeah. But with that, of course, comes the fact that CVs have an insane amount of influence on matches. Even random battles to an extent. Now, like I've said before, their influence is less in random battles because they have 12 ships to deal with. But when it comes down to competitive, to ranked, to clan battles, clan wars, their influence is godlike. And I've played CV in clan wars. In clan brawls, I had to step up and play Richtofen, and oh my god, it is so much easier playing CVs in clan battles than in random battles, in most cases. Because you don't have to deal with 12 ships. You're literally focusing on half that number of ships. And in competitive, a huge part of that is map control. And if ships don't want to get nuked by the CV, they got to give up map control. And because in order to get decent AA in competitive, with only 6 surface ships being with you, because the 7th ship, the CV, is going to be sitting in the back of the map or hiding somewhere, you got to stay grouped up. Which means, okay, I can't strike you, but now my team has control of the map, so doesn't matter to me, I'm still going to win. But if they want to try and get that map control, guess what? I can now pick them off one by one in my CV, rather than having to deal with them all clumped up. Even if 2 or 3 of them are sitting on top of each other, it seems that unless they are an AA ship, which there's really only about 4 or 5 ships in the game that actually have decent enough AA to do anything to CVs if they're in groups smaller than 4. Unless they're one of those ships, you can easily deal with them. I think when I made my clan brawls video, there's plenty of clips of me torpedoing Smalllands, Hollands, and hitting AA ships, like Woosters and things like that in that video. And that's me. I'm not that good of a CV player. I'm really not. Most of my experience in CVs has been in Graf Zeppelin. It wasn't until recently that I've really tried to expand my horizons in the game by playing DDs and now trying to get into CVs and become a better CV player. So that was a bit surprising. I'm not saying it's easy to be a CV in clan, but I'm just saying without those other 6 to 7 ships to worry about, the world's your oyster, it seems like. Now, of course, when you get to higher rankings and like clan battles and stuff, then you run to teams that really know what they're doing and have the builds down to literally science, and then that's different. But just from dealing with less ships, it's crazy. Now, something that is probably going to surprise a lot of you, I actually thought for a while that things were getting better with the CVs. And if 1 or 2 things hadn't happened recently, I would say things were actually getting better. If you guys remember a little while ago, Richtofen actually got nerfed. They increased the elliptical for her dive bombers, which that's a big deal. Because before, a Richtofen player could literally guarantee that they were going to hit all 3 of their bombs onto any decent-sized ship. We're talking about from large cruiser to battleship, of course. Because the reticle was so small, it would literally fit within most larger cruisers and battleships. So that would be like if a battleship could literally know that their elliptical is in... I'm sorry, elliptical. Their eclipse is within the dimensions of whatever they're shooting at. That is crazy. But now they've enlarged it to where there's a bit more RNG involved and there's room for them to miss. I know people will say, well, balancing by RNG isn't that great. Well, most battleships are balanced by RNG. I hate to tell you that. That's why they have such bad dispersion, because if battleships could consistently hit their targets with their AP, good God, that would be crazy. But wait, Thunderer can do that. That's another video for another day. But that was something that was very much needed. And then the Commander rework was released. Well, not released yet, but the Commander rework is soon to be released upon us. Which, there are a couple of skills in there which are pretty insano buengo. The 2 that are probably the biggest are the torpedo protection skill, whatever it's called. It allows CV torpedoes to ignore 15% of torpedo protection on ships. So your torpedoes are effectively doing 15% more damage than they would normally. Then there's the AP bomber skill, which increases the damage per AP bomb by 5, with literally no downsides so far. It's still a work in progress. These skills can of course change, but there's no downside. You just get a straight 5% buff per bomb to your AP bombers. And Richtofen right now, if all 3 hit in Citadel, which on most larger battleships, it's not that hard to do. Richtofen's going to be doing somewhere in the neighborhood of like 30,000 damage a strike. Right now it can 26,400 damage in one run if all 3 of her bombs connect in Citadel. Which does take a fair amount of luck. I normally can get about 2 off on ships like the Kurfürst, Kremlin, Slava, and Thunderer. I can normally, in most cases, get 2 if the ship's not maneuvering too much. If they're fully maneuvering, I can usually at least get 1. And that's, again, a player of my skill level. So, yeah. And there's literally no downside to this. The kicker for this, though, is there's a similar skill on the battleship commander skill tree that does the same thing. Battleships have to take a 40% increase to the time of flooding and fires. There ain't a sane battleship captain that's going to take that skill. 30% increase, or it's 30 or 40%. I think it was 40% that lowered it to 30% or something like that, but it's still a 30% increase to the time of fires and flooding, when you have to invest so many captain skills to try and get those down to as low as possible. That is insane, and I cannot see why CVs get it just for free. It's silly. So another thing is AA ships. I mean, well, not just AA ships, but AA in general is still nonsense. We have dozens of ships that have A ratings of like 95 and 100, but it just does nothing to planes, it seems like. And a lot of that does have to do with most AA damage is in flak bursts now, and flak bursts can be dodged. Very good CV players can dodge almost all flak, except for maybe the random flak cloud that just pops up right in front of your planes. And that's extremely infuriating, especially if you have an AA build, because an AA build is quite expensive in terms of commander points and modules to be equipped. And there are some new AA skills coming with the commander rework. I don't think they'll change that much. They might. Again, they're still working on it. But from what I've seen, I don't really see it fixing AA just with these skills. Like, okay, you can throw up a little bit more flak, which is good, and do a little bit more damage. And do a little bit more of continuous damage, which, again, it's a good thing. But, again, I don't see it changing anything majorly. And can we also talk about how destroyers like the Holland seem to have more effective AA than ships like Montana, which literally has mountains of AA on it. I know people say, "Oh, well, it's a modern destroyer with radar fire control systems for its AA." Like, okay, yeah, but still, there's a mountain of AA on the side of the Montana. Like, come on, that's got to be pretty effective. But yeah. And also, still, countering CVs is still very, very, very limited. You can do 4 things in total. You can turn, pop your DFAA or your fighter, set your AA sector, and then pray. And that's all you can really do to counter CVs. That's it. And then a lot of times that you do this, you're just setting yourself up to get shot by the enemy team. Because I think the part's played already, but for example, in this match right here, I went to use my rocket planes against the Noveski, and he just started turning right away. And he turned and gave my team broadside, and my team got a couple of pot shots off on him there. And it's kind of hilarious. It's terrible too, but if you're playing Richtofen and you go toward any cruiser, they will immediately begin to turn because they know if you catch their broadside, you can do around 30,000 damage to them in one run. And I did this a lot to Moskvas and Stalingrads and, well, any cruiser that would show me broadside. Now, funnily enough, the only cruiser that's really immune to it is the Goliath because of how chunky her armor is. But most cruisers, you can legitimately just nuke half of their health away. With Citadel damage, too, by the way, with these rocket planes. And that is absolutely insane. So for cruisers, they're choosing, do I want to get nuked by the CV? Do I want to get nuked by the CV's team? That's your choices, really, when it comes to countering the CVs. Meanwhile, of course, planes are manually controlled, and they can dodge your AA and flak, which is being fired by AI rather than you. And again, I don't think giving you manual control of your A guns is going to do much, because then you gotta, of course, control all of your ship and try to make sure you're not selling into a crossfire, make sure you're maneuvering, then also somehow control your AA guns. I don't know how it would work. I don't think it would work that well at all if you would do that, because then you're doing way too much, while the CV just having to focus on dodging your flak and getting a good run off on you. Then, of course, the other part of countering CVs is that you depend upon your CV to counter the enemy CV. A lot of comments were like, oh, if there's an FDR in the match, all you gotta do is have your CV snipe that FDR. Okay, try to get a random CV to do what you tell it to do. Probably not going to happen because he's busy trying to accommodate your 11 other teammates that are asking for his help. I've been there. It's kind of annoying. You're trying to do one thing for one flank, the other flank's screaming for your help. You send your planes over there to help them. The other flank starts screaming at you. The frickin' destroyer at J10's asking for your help for some reason. And then, oh, look, you're being dropped by the enemy CV now, so you try to go help yourself. And then, gotta go help the ACAP. Oh, hey, there's a DD like 2 kilometers away from me. How'd he get there? And, oh, shit, things like that. So, yeah, CVs are pretty busy as is already. So, yeah. And overall, my thoughts are, we were maybe heading in the right direction if the Commander rework didn't come out, and if the FDR didn't exist. I think we would be heading in a better direction than what we are now. But again, with the Commander rework, the skills could change. The AP bomber skill and the torpedo protection, whatever that's called, the skill that ignores the torpedo protection, are pretty BS in my opinion. And there needs to be some major downsides to those. Like, I don't know, maybe if you take the AP bomber skill, when your flight deck gets set on fire, you can't launch planes anymore like it used to be. I do think that aspect for sure needs to come back. But, yeah. I don't say CV shouldn't exist or CV shouldn't be in the game. They've been in the game since very early on. I don't think it's right to just remove a class from the game. But I certainly think they are still nowhere near balanced enough to be in competitive. They are nowhere near balanced enough for that interaction in a 7v7 format. Or anything underneath 12, I don't think it's balanced enough at all. You need that many ships for the CV to focus on and try to focus on, and you need plenty of ships to counter them too if you're not in, a ship that isn't a Minotaur, a Worcester, a Holland, a Smallland, or one of the few Russian DDs that are pretty good at AA, or like the Jean Bar. There's a handful of ships that can reliably counter CVs, even though you can fully spec into AA and ships that used to be good with AA, and it just doesn't seem like it matters anymore, like the Atlanta, for example. But yeah, that's my thoughts on CVs for now. The Commander rework will be really telling once it comes out and we see how they are then. They've said they're balanced, the changes after release, but balancing something after release makes it very miserable for players during that balancing period. Well, not even in the balancing period, during the collection of information period. But yeah. Anyway, guys, that's what I think about this subject for now after playing ranked for some time and trying my hand at CV for the past month or so. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I'm sure this comment section will be interesting. I'm sure this video will have a very interesting like to dislike ratio, as always with CV videos. But anyway, guys, hope you're having a wonderful Wednesday. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.